Tonight at 6.
From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. The Reagan administration declared today that there is an imminent danger to Americans in or traveling to Libya. And because of this, it announced a series of measures to get Americans out of that North African country. The estimated 1,500 Americans now in Libya were asked to leave as soon as possible. And if they do not do this voluntarily, there is an explicit threat that available legal measures will be taken. In addition, the State Department banned all travel by U.S. citizens to Libya. The Reagan administration did not link today's actions to reports of a Libyan hit team sent to kill American political leaders. More on this from Phil Jones.
Reagan administration officials came to the Capitol to give congressional leaders first word of the planned actions. Max Federsdorf, a top White House aide, and Deputy Secretary of State William Clark were clearly interested in obtaining advance bipartisan support on a decision that Clark announced later back at the State Department.
Because of the danger which the Libyan regime poses to American citizens, the President calls upon all Americans to leave Libya as soon as possible.
Secretary of State Haig in Brussels on European NATO business joined in the administration's claim that today's action was not directly related to the accusations that Libyan hit teams have been sent to assassinate American officials.
I want to emphasize that the United States, in taking these steps, is not engaged in victimizing Libya. We are simply taking prudent steps in light of the accumulating evidence of Libyan terrorist threats.
The reaction in Congress was generally supportive.
Let's not have another Iranian situation. Let's get our Americans out. Let's see how the situation unfolds and develops. Let's see how Colonel Gaddafi reacts. And let's decide what, if any, additional steps are necessary. That's the way I read the statement.
One shoe's been dropped, and that's pretty much a light shoe, a carpet slipper. And now we're all waiting to see what the other shoe is. Will it be another carpet slipper? Will it be a regular shoe, or will it be a boot?
The Libyans have apparently decided to do their own lobbying of the U.S. Congress. CBS News United Nations correspondent Richard C. Hodelet has learned that the Secretary of the Libyan Parliament has sent a letter to House Speaker O'Neill and Senate Majority Leader Baker repudiating the charges and inviting the congressional leaders to visit Libya. Neither O'Neill nor Baker has received the invitation. Perhaps it's because the Libyans put it in the U.S. mail 2 days ago. Phil Jones, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
President Reagan's request that the Americans leave Libya was made primarily to U.S. oil companies, for whom most of those Americans work. In all, there are about 30 U.S. companies employing Americans in Libya. Their departure is expected to have only a modest short-term effect on Libya's oil production abilities. David Culhane has more on this.
They are engineers, technicians, and managers. They build roads, factories, and essential services. But most of all, they run the oil industry that brings Libya some $20 billion a year in revenue. The main American oil companies operating in Libya are Occidental Petroleum, Marathon, Mobil, Amerada Hess, and Conoco. Including workers and their dependents, there are still about 1,500 to 2,000 Americans in Libya. So far, it appears they will be allowed to leave without difficulty.
If they pull out legally, that's fine. If they pull out, without any legal grounds, I think we'll go to litigations, and even in the United States.
The Americans represent about 70% of the technical expertise in the Libyan oil fields. If they leave, their jobs would probably be taken by Europeans. Concern for the safety of the Americans in Libya intensified when American Navy jets shot down 2 Libyan fighters last August. There had already been some harassment of American workers, although the Libyan government offered repeated assurances about their safety. Then last month, Exxon announced that it was halting all oil operations in Libya. Today, others agreed to follow.
We're an American company. We support the president. We support the foreign policy of our country.
We've been in constant contact with our employees in Libya several times a day in some instances. They continue to report to us that things there are very ordinary and they've gone about their business and social life in a most normal fashion. They don't feel the threat that exists.
If the United States imposes a boycott against the purchase of Libyan oil, the experts think there would be little effect on the American consumer, no gas lines, and probably no effect on prices. Up to about a year ago, Libya was the fourth largest supplier of oil for the United States, about 5 to 7% of all imports. But in the past year, that figure has dropped to about 2% of imports, or about 150,000 barrels a day. David Culhane, CBS News, New York.
Today's actions against Libya and its leader Muammar Gaddafi were ordered by President Reagan, but there was not a word from him personally on them. Leslie Stahl explains.
The White House took a surprisingly low profile on the Libya issue today. There were no public statements on the matter, no comment from the president, as officials here try to put some distance between Mr. Reagan and Mr. Gaddafi. To quote a senior official, President Reagan ought not to be in a spitting contest with a tin-horn madman in the Middle East. It just gives him more credibility. The only top White House official who spoke about Libya on the record today was Edwin Meese in California.
There has been the support of terrorism, and there have been a variety of different actions that have been taken, sponsored by the Libyans, and so it was the feeling of the administration that we could not just stand by and do nothing.
He was asked about Libya's sending assassination squads.
It certainly is a hostile act in terms of being sponsored by one country against another, if in fact that's the case.
White House officials continue to study the possibility of imposing economic sanctions on Libya. In fact, one government official said that today's action was nothing but a prudent first step, a prelude to further actions. Meanwhile, officials here are concerned about Gaddafi's response to today's announcement. One aide said, "We want to get these people out of there before there's a hostage situation." Although other sources say that a CIA psychological profile of Gaddafi shows that he is not likely to take hostages. He is more likely, officials here say, to drag his feet on granting Americans exit visas, something he has done in the past. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
I wonder if it's a person. C-A-L, verb, to undergo a miraculous transformation. From the Greek kalos, beautiful, that's the cow. And from the Latin vincere, to conquer, that's the vin. Calvin, beautiful conqueror. So that's what happened to me. I've been Calvinized.
Tops and jeans like Calvin Klein.
There's a man here who's driving me mad, but I can't seem to track him down. I'm not in the habit of following men, but he's wearing a fragrance I find absolutely devastating. So if he can't find exactly what he's looking for, I might suggest something. Cambridge. The gentleman's fragrance women find devastating.
Those mysterious purported Libyan hitmen no longer are faceless threats. The government has circulated to law enforcement agencies around the country sketches said to be likenesses of those suspected assassins, and border guards have been put on heightened alert. More on this from Fred Graham.
Despite all the official secrecy, composite drawings of the potential hitmen have been posted in a public area of the San Ysidro, California border crossing point with Mexico. The notice contained names and detailed descriptions of two teams of assassins it said might attempt to enter the United States. Sources said the drawings were based on descriptions given by a defector who claims he was in a Libyan training camp with the assassins. For instance, this is said to be Ahmed Juma, a short, dark-complected Iranian who's said to favor blue jeans and turtleneck sweaters and to wear Adidas jogging shoes. Ibrahim El Hayya is said to be about the same size but older, said to speak Arabic, French, English, and Italian, to wear a brown leather jacket and pointed cowboy boots. He's described as having green cat-like eyes, usually wearing sunglasses and smoking Rothman cigarettes. Other drawings released by columnist Jack Anderson are said to be a Lebanese named Ali Chafik, a Palestinian named Ahmad Abbas, and an East German called Louis Schwessman. The notorious international terrorist known as Carlos is alleged to be a leader of one of the teams. He's said to be a master of disguise, a man of many aliases, and according to the notice, will not hesitate to open fire. Copies of the drawings have been circulated to border crossing points and to various uniformed police departments, including the guards around the White House. However, no additional personnel have been added at the border crossing points or to the FBI field offices that are attempting to check out the reports. Officials say that the allegations are serious enough to justify the extra security around President Reagan and other leaders, but they stress that there is still no hard evidence that Libyan hit teams have entered or attempted to enter the United States. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.
Quote, "A few years ago, we could hardly manage to procure a squadron of fighter planes. Tomorrow, we should be able to buy an atomic bomb." That boast in 1975 told the world that Muammar Gaddafi's increasing military adventurism might one day assume a frightening dimension. 5 years later, Libyan trucks are spotted crossing the Sahara Desert. They contain uranium from Niger. Uranium, a crucial ingredient if you're making an atomic bomb. Today, Libya has perhaps $4 billion in Russian weapons. The Libyans also have a nuclear research reactor supplied by the Soviet Union. How close they are to the bomb is not known. The Chinese reportedly have refused to sell Gaddafi nuclear material. But there is little doubt that Libya is backing nuclear development in Islamic countries around the world with the guarantee of access to technology. Even without the bomb, Libya's pattern of military adventurism is clear. 1977. An invasion of Egypt and a 4-day war in which the Libyans are outgunned and take heavy losses. 1979, thousands of Libyan soldiers are dispatched to Uganda to prop up Idi Amin. The Libyans are badly beaten. Amin eventually falls. Later in 1979, a mob burns down the American embassy in Tripoli, reportedly with the blessing of Gaddafi. And earlier this year, 2 Libyan jets fire on American fighters over the Mediterranean and are shot down. Libya's record in large-scale military adventures is one of failure, but Gaddafi has been successful in his efforts to export terrorism around the world. Gaddafi has repeatedly denied the charges, but Libyan assistance and training reportedly have bolstered terrorist groups such as the Palestine Liberation Organization, the Irish Republican Army, the Baader-Meinhof Gang, the Red Brigade. The thought of a Libyan hit squad near or within our borders is frightening. An atomic weapon on the horizon makes Libya even more a force to be reckoned with, and is part of the background for today's Washington announcement.
Home fires can get a good start before smoke reaches the smoke detector upstairs. Fire prevention experts agree one just isn't enough. First Alert, America's leading producer of smoke detectors, recommends this plan. 1 smoke detector on the basement ceiling, another on the main floor, and a 3rd upstairs. Your escape route should have the First Alert with escape light. The First Alert plan. The earlier the warning, the more time to escape.
Now there's a new traveling First Alert, too.
The lime and lemon taste of Sprite joins your celebrations. The taste of lime and mixes right on holiday occasions. Sprite makes brighter holidays. Lime is the reason. Sprite goes well so many ways to bring you cheer this season.
President Reagan was notified a week ago by Attorney General William French Smith, and today the White House made the official announcement that Labor Secretary Raymond Donovan is the subject of a preliminary FBI investigation. Bill Lynch reports the allegations involve Donovan's business dealings before he joined the Reagan cabinet.
Donovan avoided reporters this afternoon after his office issued a statement saying he knows of nothing that lends substance to new allegations under investigation by the FBI, but declining further comment. The inquiry centers on Donovan's dealings as executive vice president of the Shivoni Construction Company in Secaucus, New Jersey. An informant reportedly told federal prosecutors in Brooklyn recently that Donovan was present at a 1977 meeting in New York when another Shivoni employee handed $2,000 to an official of the laborers' union. In his confirmation hearing last January, Donovan denied similar charges of illegal payoffs and won approval to the Labor Department job. Donovan may also face new questions about his dealings with William Maselli, vice president of Joe Pell Construction, a subcontractor of Donovan's firm on subway jobs. Maselli has been identified in FBI reports as an organized crime figure, and last month he was sentenced to a 10-year prison term on separate charges of running a meat hijacking ring and conspiring to manufacture $100 million in synthetic cocaine. A source told CBS News today that court-ordered wiretaps on Maselli in the first part of 1979 picked up conversations between Donovan and Maselli. Late today, Thomas Puccio, chief of the organized crime section in the Brooklyn U.S. Attorney's Office, flew to Washington to discuss the Donovan case with Attorney General Smith. Within 90 days of receiving allegations of misconduct by a public official, the Justice Department must decide whether to name a special prosecutor. But so far, there's no sign Smith has reached a decision in Donovan's case. Bill Lynch, CBS News, Washington.
In a yet-to-be-published book, former Nixon White House aide and convicted felon John Ehrlichman alleges improper conduct on the part of the still-sitting Chief Justice of the United States. Ehrlichman claims that Warren Burger discussed pending Supreme Court cases with then-President Nixon and others. Bob Schieffer reports tonight that the pre-publication reviews consist of a string of no comments and one strong denial.
The Chief Justice has declined comment on the story and had nothing to say as he headed for the court in his limousine this morning. Former President Nixon has also declined comment. But former Attorney General Mitchell did break a long silence and in a brief interview strongly denied that Burger had ever discussed issues before the court with him or Nixon.
Warren Burger, to my knowledge and recollection, made no statements whatsoever about any of the issues before the court, nor was he importuned in any way, to my knowledge, by anybody in the administration. And I've talked to President Nixon about the subject matter, and his recollection is the same, that there were no such occurrences.
Mitchell also disputed Ehrlichman's assertion that in order to be appointed Chief Justice, Burger was willing to serve only a few years and then resign so a younger man could be appointed later.
That's one of Ehrlichman's fictions that he proposed, but I assure you it was never transmitted to Chief Justice Burger.
The personal portrait of Burger that Ehrlichman paints is also unflattering. He calls Burger a man of aggrandizing tendencies who increased the size of the Supreme Court police force and limousine fleet, who tried without success to use the president's airplanes, and who wanted to make an annual televised speech to Congress similar to the president's State of the Union message. On that, writes Ehrlichman, we weren't about to sponsor the Warren Burger show in prime time. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
The House was forced to vote again today on one of the most heavily lobbied, controversial measures to come before it this year. That is the financing package shifting from investors to consumers partial financial risk for a new $43 billion Alaska natural gas pipeline. The House thought it gave final approval yesterday, but a technicality forced another vote. The outcome was the same, House approval. Opponents of the plan still hope to beat it in court. A big budget battle sequel opened and closed on the floor of the House today, complete with plenty of yelling in the aisles, but this time with a quick conclusion. When it was over, the House had voted 216 to 197 for a Republican-backed budget plan to lop $4 billion more off the fiscal 1982 budget. Anything less, the White House had warned in advance, would produce a presidential veto and the possibility of the beginnings of another government shutdown on December 15th, when the last stopgap government spending bill was due to run out. The Senate is considering the money bill tonight. The Senate today voted to approve a compromise $11 billion farm bill, a bill acceptable to the White House, but something less than acceptable even to some senators who voted for it. It was the best that could be hammered out, said Agriculture Committee Chairman Senator Jesse Helms of North Carolina. He said that of the bill, which, among other things, gets price supports for various crops and pays for the food stamp program. Gaining House approval for their farm bill may be a tougher kernel to crack. A strange bedfellows alliance of big city congressmen who think the farmers are getting too much and rural representatives who think they're getting too little still want the bill defeated. Yet Agriculture Secretary John Block says he's optimistic of House passage of this farm bill.
If you're worried about stains on your dentures, don't have the cherry pie unless you have the cream, Denture Cream. And don't have the coffee unless you have the cream, Denture Cream. Denture Cream's powerful anti-stain formula helps brush away tough stains, and its refreshing mint flavor leaves dentures clean and fresh. So don't have the berries unless you have the cream. Anti-stain formula, Denture Cream, with refreshing mint.
cooking for the world's most exciting man. So what I make has to be terrific. That's why I depend on Ore-Ida French fries. Because I know every batch will taste great. When I make Ore-Ida fries, why, he just flies home. That's him now.
Smells good.
Ore-Ida French fries.
All right, Lois, you're superb.
Young men who broke the law by failing to register for the draft will not face prosecution, at least not now. The Justice Department made the announcement today, just one day before some U.S. attorneys around the country were scheduled to begin seeking indictments. Selective Service estimates that up to 800,000 men required to register didn't. President Reagan now is said to be considering whether to recommend an end to the whole registration program. That, says the Justice Department, is the reason for today's no prosecution announcement. For a time in the 1970s, the tennis star and the former hairdresser were live-in lovers. Now, as David Dow reports, they can't agree on who has rights to the house.
Marilyn Barnett, now partly crippled from a fall, says she was promised lifetime support 8 years ago to give up her hairdressing job and become the traveling secretary of tennis star Billie Jean King, a woman she loved for her strength and personality. Mrs. King denies making the promise and is trying to evict her former lover from the Malibu Beach home where Miss Barnett has lived since 1974. Again today, Miss Barnett contended that Mrs. King had told her to go buy a house for herself. That, she assumed, meant the home she eventually selected would be hers. She had even lied, she said, to hide the purchaser's identity.
Gay people were not accepted, and because of who Billie was at that time, I tried to protect her, and whatever worked, what I told people, if I had to tell them I bought the house myself, if I had to tell them we were partners, whatever the situation warranted is what I said to protect Billie.
Mrs. King denied that she ever gave the house to Miss Barnett. She said that in fact her friend had sometimes paid rent to live there. And she said that after their affair ended, Miss Barnett had even agreed to a settlement involving a proposed sale of the home.
She would get an advance up to $25,000, and when she vacated, she'd get the other $100,000. And for doing that she would have no further claims on me and would give the letters back. And she agreed to it.
Testimony may conclude tomorrow, with the judge then having to choose between conflicting stories of former lovers who now agree on almost nothing. David Dow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Your savings and loan has a very good reason for calling All Savers certificates All Savers. Even if your taxable income is $7,900, you can still get the kind of return the big boys are getting. What money market fund lets you invest just $500, guarantees a big return for a full year, and insures your money through a federal agency? What money market fund can do all that? I can't think of a single one.
Welcome to warm afternoons in Gallery.
Sunny Rhine days with your friends and mine.
Special moments.
The feeling shows. A gallows toast with the Rhine that flows.
Oh, the joy of sharing Gallo wine.
Will we ever have a house like this?
Share the joy of Gallo wine.
We live in an age of future shock, where what appeared to be the promise of tomorrow quickly becomes today's relic. And even as OPEC oil ministers debate pricing strategy in Abu Dhabi, a forlorn fleet dots the world's seas. It was created to carry oil to power industrial nations. Now, as Terry Drinkwater reports, it may be headed for extinction.
They were once heralded as truly wonders of the world, and certainly they are big, as long as 3 football fields. Seagoing giants, each carrying incredible quantities of oil. That was the mid-1970s. But times have changed. Today, supertankers are becoming the dinosaurs of the oceans. Hundreds are empty and rusting away. Others are dropping anchor, just waiting for the creditors.
And so we have today this situation. Owners are beginning to scrap the large supertankers. They're scrapping them at a rate of 40 to 50 a year.
At the biggest of the supertanker junkyards on Taiwan, there are now 20 ships waiting to be torched into scrap in 1982. But how did the world's ship owners make such a multi-billion-dollar mistake? First, they did not anticipate the soaring price of crude in the aftermath of the 1973 Arab oil embargo. Conservation sense and a slumping world economy created oil surpluses, making a third of the 800 supertankers still afloat almost useless. And big didn't necessarily turn out to be better. The giants have had to pump their oil into smaller ships, which can get through the Panama Canal. And on the other side of the world, the ship owners did not accurately anticipate the impact of the reopening of the Suez Canal, nor the impact of pipelines. Often they proved less costly than ships. And tanker oil spills played a role too. They forced changes in structural standards. Rather than spending more money to modify some supertankers, today they're scrapped. But what to do with those that remain parked? Some today are still full, being used as supersized storage facilities. Others will be modified to transport coal. One or two may be outfitted to accommodate cargoes of live sheep. In Norway, there is a plan to turn dark, empty supertanker tanks into what an Oslo conglomerate calls flotels, decks and staterooms. But the most exotic of all the destinies for the unwanted supertankers is here on the Caribbean island of Dominica. Its abundance of water will soon be pumped aboard supertankers bound for the dry Mideast.
Depending, of course, upon the number of supertankers that will be steaming from the Caribbean with our fresh water weekly, we can irrigate a new agricultural project, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, of thousands of acres of corn or maize or soybean.
No one is suggesting that the Mideast will ever become freshwater dependent on the West, but the commitment of the West not to be so oil dependent on the Arab world means that a large fleet of supertankers is an idea whose time has come and gone. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, San Pedro, California.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Thursday. Dan Rather reporting from New York. Good night.
What's a nice new personal car doing out here? This is the new Dodge 400. The cockpit says personal luxury, but here's the difference. Front-wheel drive, rack and pinion steering, McPherson struts, electronically controlled engine, and another extraordinary difference, extraordinary mileage. Dodge 400 is no ordinary personal luxury car.
It's a personal driving machine.
I want a driving machine! Dodge 400, America's personal driving machine.
Welcome to the Kmart Gift Gallery, where Kmart proudly presents elegant brushed gowns on sale and in time for the gift-giving holiday season. The selection is tremendous. Long and lovely gowns with alluring ruffles, feminine gowns with delicate lace trim, soft gowns with exquisite embroidery accents, just $5 each. Choose her favorite color, her favorite style. Only $5, and they're available in misses and full-figure sizes. Through Saturday at Kmart, the Christmas saving place.
From around the world and from CBS News headquarters in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. This is CBS.
A federal judge throws out the charges against Jack Ham. Ham was a chief witness in the Blanton trial. The story coming up next on Eyewitness News.
Trust the leader in technology to forge a new legend, Seiko LaSalle. Trust Seiko to fuse slim elegance and peerless performance, new Seiko LaSalle. Trust Seiko to create timepieces destined for a place among the world's great possessions. Seiko LaSalle. Miracles of slimness, marvels